Welcome to an extra special edition of Through the Decades on Absolute Radio. Now, my name's Jay Lawrence. Usually, I sit here and I play one song from the 60s and then one from the 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, 10s and 20s. Now, tonight is no different whatsoever, but I'm not choosing the music. We've got a special guest, a special curator of the show, almost, and it's Snow Patrol's Gary Lightbody. Gary, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So how's it been picking your favourite songs from the last 60 years?
It was very easy. There was a lot to choose from. The hard thing is leaving stuff out, but not too difficult to find songs to enthuse about. There are many, many, many songs that I'd bend someone's ear about. And today that person is you. Even just picking, like I'm a Beatles freak. It's in my blood, you know what I mean? I love them so much. My first experience with the Beatles was actually like a vinyl copy of the London Philharmonic Orchestra plays the songs of Lennon and McCartney. That was the only Beatles record in our house. So my first coming into contact with the Beatles was kind of this, a very strange way in. It seemed my mum used to play that record, and obviously I was a kid, I wasn't really that interested, but the songs seemed to like fuse into my DNA. When we listened to the radio, it was, Madonna, like when we were that age, it was Madonna and Michael Jackson and Cyndi Lauper, everything that was on the radio in the 80s. It wasn't really a lot of Beatles songs. Those orchestral recordings were kind of my first in. So when it comes to the Beatles, I feel like they're just part of me. So like choosing even a Beatles song from the 60s is hard. So never mind all the other amazing songs by, the Kinks or the Stones or the Animals. Or, there's just a plethora of incredible artists. But I couldn't not choose. It was just one song from the 60s. It has to be the Beatles.
Well, exactly. So we start with the 60s and we start with your choice of the Beatles. It's not too much of a surprise. Beatles were fairly good. But with Revolvers...
Yeah, they were all right. Right?
with Revolvers, Tomorrow Never Knows. Now, obviously, you could have chosen so many songs, as you say. Why this song in particular? Why does it mean so much to you?
Revolver's my favourite Beatles album. I think it is their finest work amongst many, many, many masterpieces. Tomorrow Never Knows. There was so much invention in it. No one had used looping before. No one had sort of like, they were literally inventing it as it was going on in the studio. Ringo's incredible drum beat that was sort of summoned from the sky or the muses. It was an absolute sonic immersion that you can't hear that song and come out the other side feeling the same way. And I think that's why I chose it. John Lennon said he wanted it to sound like 1,000 monks chanting. And I think it has that extraordinary power in it. It's got a power from beyond.
It feels like you're listening to the progression of music. I wasn't around in the 60s, but you listen to it and you can almost just hear a step forward in a way, can't you?
They were doing so many things in the studio on a day-to-day basis that changed the face of music. But I think just in the one song, like George Martin said, that it was the only Beatles song that could not be recreated. They were literally playing the loops by riding the faders up and down on them and stuff. It's like you could not recreate that song.
Have you ever felt compelled to include a sitar in a Snow Patrol song?
No, I haven't. They're way too difficult to play. Have you ever like they are an absolute it is a work of ingenuity that I don't understand. I mean, it's just a special instrument that takes a master. It's never going to be on the cards for me to play that. I'll leave that to the experts.
We can listen to a bit of sitar now. Your choice representing Absolute Radio's 60s, the Beatles, and Tomorrow Never Knows. Undertones and Teenage Kicks on Absolute Radio. We are going through the decades. My name's Jay Lawrence. All the music today chosen by special guest Gary Lightbody of Snow Patrol. Now that song, Gary, I mean, it's such a perfect example of how to make a short, a sharp, a sweet rock song that does what it's meant to do, which is sort of stay in your head.
John Peel said it was the greatest 2 minutes, 30 seconds of his life. And I think that there's no better way of stating it than that. I mean, it is certainly the best 2 minutes, 30 seconds of my life. If there is a Mount Rushmore of Northern Irish songs and we only get to pick 4, it is definitely one of them. It's an amazing song as well. If you think about what was happening in Northern Ireland at the time, you know, things were so bleak and so grim, and it had so much hope, so much joy, so much sort of normality. The normal sort of life goes on, life and love and happiness and joy at a time when the news was telling a different story, but the Undertones were throwing positivity out into the world, and I think that is worth its weight in gold. Did you listen to that song growing up? Did you take inspiration from that song? 100%. Pretty much the first 3 Snow Patrol records I was trying to recreate it. I was trying my best to do, you know, Teenage Kicks, whatever year it was, you know, 1998 or 2001 or 2004, whatever year. I was always trying to make that song. I gave up eventually, realizing that it could not be repeated. It's another Tomorrow Never Knows. It's one moment in time that just can't be redone. And why would you? You know, it's a fool's errand, really, to recreate a moment of genius. You send yourself mad. You've already chosen, you know, the Beatles, and you've gone to the Undertones and Teenage Kicks, you know, two massive bands, and an anthem, of course, in Teenage Kicks as well. And I can imagine, you know, when you're growing up, sometimes when you hear these bands for the first time, these bands that were around before you were born and before you were, you know, choosing the music that you were going to listen to, you know, almost for the rest of your life. These are the songs and these are the bands which shape you, aren't they? The Undertones are absolutely beloved in our wee country, as we call it, and you know, and around the world, of course, too. But we're very, very proud of them. What is sometimes not shown, you know, about Northern Ireland is the level of humour and heart, joy, and the fact how amazing people are. Every time I have a friend who visits from like America or somewhere around the world, they'll always tell me after their trip in Northern Ireland, they were like, never been so welcomed by any people in Ireland, anywhere we go. I had an American friend who literally got invited in for a cup of tea on somebody who was just passing their house. So it's songs like Teenage Kicks that show that side, you know, that doesn't normally get shown, you know, on the news. That's why I think we all love it so much. So from Absolute Radio 70s to Absolute 80s, undoubtedly one of the biggest rock songs ever. Next, what made you choose AC/DC and Back in Black? It's a beast of a song. Stepping into a legend like Bon Scott's shoes would be daunting for anybody. And Brian Johnson not only stepped in there, but like smashed it out of the park. And AC/DC were definitely, you know, a band that sort of blew my socks off. Made me want to sort of pick up a guitar in the first place, but then made me realize that I couldn't play it, and there was never any chance that I was going to play it. So it got shoved into the back of the cupboard. And I think the song we're going to talk about next is when it got brought back out again. AC/DC and Back in Black, Gary Lightbody's choice for Absolute 80s. He's doing all right so far, isn't he, Gary Lightbody? Choosing his favourite music of the last 60 years. He's done one from the Beatles, he's done one from the Undertones, and he's done AC/DC as well, covering 60s, 70s and 80s. Next, though, he's got 90s, noughties, 10s and 20s all to cover. Gary Lightbody going through the decades. What's he going to choose next? Nirvana and Lithium, representing Absolute Radio 90s as we go through the decades on Absolute Radio, as chosen by Snow Patrol's Gary Lightbody. Gary, I hope you don't mind me doing this, but after a little bit of Wikipediaing to find out your age, I count you as being around 15 when Nirvana's Nevermind was released. Is that about right? So I often say that 14, 15, 16, you know, those are the years when really music can, you know, affect you and can almost decide which music you will be listening to for the rest of your life, which ones you're going to be clinging on to for the rest of your life. So going back to the 90s, is Nirvana representative of that for you? 100%. Absolutely. Yeah, I was 16 when Nevermind came out. My friend Mark Greenfield left the school grounds to go to the nearest record store, got Nevermind on cassette, managed to listen to it over the next few lessons, listened to the first half of the cassette. I don't know how he did it. And then on the bus on the way home, side 2 was lined up and ready to go. And he'd get, like, you know, those awkward headphones used to be big sort of orange things. You sort of twist it round to give your mate an ear. And I sort of twisted it round, and we shared an ear each. And it's a word I don't think you can say on Absolute Radio. But the first track on side 2, which is Territorial, and then it's the P word. And the first sort of guttural roar of, come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try and love one another right now. It launched into Territorial, and my life changed forever. It felt like something just shifted in me almost immediately. And very, very quickly after, the guitar came back out of the cupboard. I was trying to learn how to play all the Nirvana songs, trying to learn how to play all the Pearl Jam songs and Soundgarden songs. And basically Seattle kind of took over my life. I just got switched on. All I wanted to be was to be in a band. I saw Nirvana play in 1992 in Belfast. I still count it as the best gig that I've ever been to. It was my second gig that I was ever at. There is a great Dave Grohl story. He is a lovely, lovely man. Really lovely. We were playing just before the Foo Fighters at the V Festival. Just before we played Chasing Cars, I dedicated the song to Nirvana. And I just wanted to say a special thank you to Dave Grohl for everything that he's given me, because I wouldn't be here without him, and I wouldn't be here without Nirvana. The crowd cheered, but it was a bigger cheer than I was sort of like. It seemed like a bigger cheer. I don't know, something just made me look to my left, and walking towards me, I'm at center stage at the microphone, is Dave Grohl with a massive smile on his face. And he'd been standing side of stage watching us, which I didn't know. And he walked right out and hugged me and said, "Thanks, man," waved to the crowd and walked back off again. And I was left standing just like, what on earth just happened to me? I was like, it was the most surreal experience of my life. An amazing experience, absolutely amazing. If I was not on stage, I would probably have been in a big bubbling mess of tears.
You've never quivered more while singing Chasing Cars.
It was truly, truly magical. It really was. There's no way of possibly putting into words what it meant to me.
Before we move to the 2010s, Gary, I just want to focus on the noughties a little bit, because I think it's fair enough to say that decade changed your life. Maybe initially with the release of Final Straw. Do you ever sit back and reminisce about that decade, those years?
Not for any prolonged periods of time. I'm always writing. We're always writing new stuff. So we're like, I think the time when we stop, when the knees go, maybe look back and with a fondness. But it was such a manic time as well. We sort of learned to sort of carve time out for ourselves, for each other, better these days. From 2003 to 2012, we didn't stop touring. In between each tour, we'd be in the studio recording another album. So, the tours would last 2 years, and then we'd come out of the studio, be in the studio for however many months, and then back out on tour again. So there was no real appreciation of what was happening. It was all just like a massive chaos. Really fun. Really, really fun chaos though. And so many great like festivals and gigs, and like playing, getting to play places for the first time, getting to play places for the 10th time. There's just so many moments in time that, I think back on really fondly. B Festival 2009, we deputized for Oasis. They headlined Staffordshire and we were on before them, and then they split up briefly at the time. We headlined the Chelmsford show thinking people are going to be annoyed that Oasis aren't here. We're going to have a hell of a time. From the very first second of that show, it was the most incredible crowd, singing every word on our side all the way through. The most spectacular. I mean, there was people from other bands in our dressing room after that gig. We were all hugging each other in tears. It was the most incredible gig. If somebody asks me about, that decade, that's the thing I think of.
Well, on to Absolute Radio 10s next. Now, you've chosen, in my opinion, just a very, very special band in Arcade Fire. What makes you drawn to them?
There's a few artists that I sort of 21st century artists that make 21st century music. I don't quite know. They're completely unique. Certainly that album, The Suburbs, was a completely unique experience from start to finish. And I listened to it over and over and over and over again. I think as the album starts to slip away a little bit from people's kind of appreciation of music, and the playlist has, you know, become dominant. It's albums like The Suburbs that reclaim that place for the album in the world, that necessary place where a band gets to tell a story for an hour of your time. They get to take you into their world. I'm ready to start, obviously, with being, you know, the sort of the big song from that record. It is a beast. It's another beast.
I saw them live once, and I've seen them live a few times, but once I saw them and they did it from a boxing ring. And they had like the boxing music to come out to, boxing ring in the middle of Wembley Arena. I think it was an incredible live band. Have you had the opportunity to play with them before?
No, we never played with them. I think we've been on the same festival lineup. It's like one of those things I you know, like I might not be able to keep it together. So, they loom large in our legend, you know. It's like one of those bands that just, they feel like they're sort of sprinkled in stardust, you know. Absolutely extraordinary.
Sprinkled in stardust, an eloquent and quite right way of describing them, I think. Arcade Fire, ready to start on Absolute Radio. Arcade Fire, ready to start from Absolute Radio 10s, as chosen by Gary Lightbody from Snow Patrol. Now, because we're going through the decades, it means we need to finish off with something brand new. So just before we get into new music, Gary, I hope you don't mind me asking, I've got to talk about the moment in the 2020s, which had 2010, sorry, which has stuck with me. I'm watching telly, brand new TV show people are raving about. I hear a singing voice that I recognize. I look up, and singing is Gary Lightbody on Game of Thrones. Do you look back on that with any fondness at all?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I was on it. It was for like 10 seconds in a wide shot. You know, I know some people that work on the show, and I sort of said, can I just sort of stand in the background and like, you know, like just be like a member of the Night's Watch or something like that. I'll just be in the shot. Like, you know, I won't wave, I promise. And they were like, yeah, well, we might be able to come up with something better for you than that. And I didn't really think much more about it. You know, there was weeks or months went by, and I got a phone call that said, will you come and sing a song on the show? It's like, sure, but what song? You know, it's in the book, but obviously we've set it to music and you just have to learn it and sing it. We also want you on horseback. Aside from like sort of pony rides when I was a kid, I'd never been on a horse, so I had to go and learn how to ride a horse the day before, which was fun. Being on set all day in Northern Ireland, you know, it's like 20 minutes from my house, you know, where they were filming in Northern Ireland. Just being on set, seeing how it worked. It rained all day, as it always does in Northern Ireland. That's why it's so green. Do
you still remember the song though? That's the question. Do you still remember it? I do. It's kind of a root song, though. I don't know if it's, you know, if it's radio for the radio, but it was the Bear and the Maiden Fair was the song. Yeah. What's the future hold for Gary Lightbody in TV land?
Zero things. In terms of acting, I've done a lot of music for TV. I'm working on a TV show at the moment, doing the music for it. But as far as acting goes, there will be no more acting.
So you're not in the Sopranos film? They've not asked you to be in, you know, get a good New Jersey accent on or something like that? No, nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to see that. Where, I'll leave my acting for wide shots. I am on a very slow horse trot across the screen. We've done the 60s, we've done the 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, and the 2010s. And the Snow Patrol's Gary Lightbody is our curator. He gets to pick the new song, the 2020s, the one from the last couple of years. And this is an artist, Gary, isn't it, who's everywhere now?
Yes, and rightly so. You know, she has written some extraordinary songs full of soul and heart and intelligence and craft, and it's kind of phenomenal. It's phenomenal what she's done, but it's, you know, it's all on talent. You know, she has so much talent. Billie Eilish, of course.
Yeah, and the song that you've chosen is particularly because she's known for some of these big. Slightly surreal left field pop songs. This one is quite a delicate song, isn't it?
Yeah, I just became completely obsessed by it. I loved it. I learned it. I played it on the acoustic. I would sing it all the time. I enjoyed singing it. It's such a powerful piece of music, and the restraint and the subtlety, but the power of the lyrics and the rawness of it. I mean, it's a masterpiece.
Okay, representing Absolute Radio 20s. This is Billie Eilish with Everything I Wanted. Representing Absolute Radio 20s, Everything I Wanted by Billie Eilish, as chosen by Gary Lightbody, the Snow Patrol. Gary, thank you so much for joining me. Before you go, I want to talk Snow Patrol. I want to talk live Snow Patrol. So you're playing Castlefield Bowl, Manchester, September 26th as part of Sounds of the City 2021. Now, what does playing live again feel like?
Oh, it's just incredible. Just incredible. We've been, every band, every artist, obviously everyone in the world has been in limbo. It's just been great to be back playing again. To misquote Danny Rojas from Ted Lasso, music is life.
Yes. What a reference.
And it is, when it is switched off, when that experience of going to a gig, when that experience of being out and feeling that kinetic energy flowing through the room, being at a gig or being on stage, either one, it fills our soul, with so much, with joy and sadness and hope. And it's another movie, TV reference, it completes us. It's the thing that is sort of missing, has been missing, is music. There's no other thing like it. I'm not just talking about Snow Patrol's music. I'm talking about all music. There's just nothing else like it. There's nothing else that gives you that lightning rod connection to the very soul of what it is to be human. We've all been lacking it.
In regards to Snow Patrol, one last question. But can we expect any new music from Snow Patrol soon?
Yeah, I've been writing all the way through. There'll be an official Snow Patrol, next album coming, next year probably, because I've been writing a lot. We've all been writing a lot. The songs are there. Just need to get in and record them, however long that takes. And it is the old adage of how long's a piece of string. But here we go.
Gary, you have been fantastic. Thank you so much for going through the decades with me tonight.
It's an absolute pleasure, Jay. Thank you for having me.